this last unit I chose to focus on what is worth teaching. And the kind of general theme that I was focused around was how could I make learning important? And I developed 3 questions for this. The first is, how should the famous "when am I ever going to use this" question be answered? At what point is the student's lack of learning his own fault instead of the teacher's? And how can we make the things we teach seem important for those we teach? And as seems to be the pattern for me, a lot of my questions and the study between them kind of melded together, and there's a lot of crisscross between the ideas that affect all these things. And specifically my first and last question I think kind of melded into one by the end of my studies. So I'm going to focus on just the first question for this video. And that question is, once again, how should the famous "when am I ever going to use this" question be answered? I think this question is quite interesting because I think as a student I ask this question a lot, especially in my math classes. And ironically I'm now going to be a math teacher. And some of these responses I've heard lately from teachers I've asked and just from things I've seen online kind of surprise me, and I actually think are quite ingenious. I think the first way we can answer is just by saying, probably never. You will probably never use this. But the problem-solving skills that you develop will be invaluable throughout your life, both in your job, in college, and just at home and in life in general. Everyone's going to cross problems in some way or another. I think math is one of the sciences that best helps us to develop problem-solving skills, to learn to overadapt and overcome and evaluate and learn on our own. And so, whereas honestly I don't think most people are going to use trigonometry for the rest of their life, there are some skills there that can be developed. And so if you just head on and say, you know what, you probably never will use this, but you're developing soft skills that you will use, I think that's a very appropriate answer. Second, I think, kind of like how my mom does sometimes when I tell a joke, she'll take advantage of the opportunity to actually answer the question with real applications. And so, what I mean by that is, I know a lot of time when I ask the question, I was just trying to kind of prod at it, and it was my way of stomping my feet and saying, I don't want to do this. But when you actually take the time to say, you know what, something must be off here. The subject must not be interesting enough for my students to actually enjoy it. Sit down for a moment, show them some real applications. I've been surprised at how much my year and a half of college I have so far, how much I've learned about how math is used in the real world. And sometimes I even think I would love to do this in the real world. I'm very much drawn to teaching, but I'm thankful for these learning opportunities I can now share with my future students and say, you know what, this is how math is used in the real world. And maybe it's beyond them, maybe it's something they can't do yet, but showing them that it is used and making it somewhat exciting would be very beneficial to them. And then the last little point I have is just, when this question arises, it's typically because you've been teaching, or I should say I've been teaching, procedurally instead of conceptually. And what I mean is, in a math class, it's very easy to just spit out formulas and give out homework problems and have them just run through equation after equation. And that gets tedious, that gets annoying. And I knew that's when I was asking the question, and that's when a lot of other students ask the question. And so, this means, number one, they probably don't understand it, or number two, it's just gotten so tedious and annoying that they don't want to continue. And so, if you teach conceptually, first off, you can eliminate that issue with understanding. If it's taught from a very broad and understanding perspective, something with real application and real use, then it's more interesting and students are actually going to participate and not going to be asking, when am I ever going to use this? But then on top of that, if you can make an activity out of it, if you can sway the class to think, you know what, I can use this to do XYZ thing, and just teach with this conceptual understanding from the get-go, I think this question will just arise less, or when it does arise, it will be a valid question. So, just to cap things off, I will show my last 2 slides in my PowerPoint. Here's the first one, and here's the second one. So, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed listening to my little learning journey.